Marcus Chun had always believed that courage was something you planned for, something you trained for during his years as a xenobiologist on frontier worlds. He thought it came with preparation, proper equipment, and backup protocols. He was wrong. Real courage, he discovered, was a split-second decision made by a tired researcher who hadn't eaten in 12 hours, standing in the middle of an alien marketplace when the sky started falling. It was the moment when every instinct screamed, run, but something deeper, something fundamentally human, whispered protect instead. When the Corvani raiders struck the peaceful trading station of Nexus 7, Marcus didn't think about the consequences. He didn't consider that saving one small, terrified alien child would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. He certainly didn't realize that her mother was Vexhara, the most feared warrior queen in 3-star systems, or that his simple act of human decency would trap him in a web of alien honor, deadly politics, and a growing war that could reshape the galaxy. Some acts of heroism echo across the stars. Others create ripples that become tsunamis. This is the story of how one human's instinctive compassion accidentally started a revolution, forged an impossible alliance, and proved that sometimes the greatest weapon in the universe isn't a plasma cannon or a starship. It's the stubborn human refusal to let innocence suffer, no matter what the cost. The first sign of trouble was the silence. Marcus Chun paused in his examination of a crystalline flower specimen, his trained ear picking up the absence of sound that had been there moments before. The bustling Nexus 7 marketplace, normally alive with the chittering, growling, and harmonic tones of a dozen different species, had gone quiet. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to hold their breath. He looked up from his portable laboratory setup, pushing wire-rimmed glasses up his nose with the back of his gloved hand. The market stretched before him in terraced levels, carved into the living rock of the asteroid station. Bioluminescent vines provided gentle lighting, their blue-green glow casting everything in an ethereal ambience that had made Nexus 7 famous across the sector as a neutral trading hub. But something was wrong. The usual crowd of traders, scaled Zephyrians with their cargo hover carts, the massive beetle-like Threx hauling precious metals, the graceful Lythean merchants with their flowing tentacles, all seemed frozen. Every eye, sensor, and photoreceptor was turned upward toward the transparent aluminum dome that covered the market district. Marcus followed their gaze and felt his stomach drop. Ships, dozens of them, painted in the harsh black and crimson of the Corvani hegemony, descended through the asteroid's weak atmosphere like metallic vultures. These weren't the sleek diplomatic vessels that occasionally visited Nexus 7, or even the heavy cargo haulers that kept trade flowing. These were warships, bristling with weapon arrays and scarred from countless battles. Raiders, whispered a translator box nearby, the mechanical voice carrying the terror of a Zephyrian merchant. The spell of silence broke. Panic erupted across the marketplace like a virus, being scattered in every direction, some taking flight on natural or artificial wings, others scrambling for the emergency shelters built into the station's lower levels. Vendors abandoned their stalls, precious goods scattering across the stone paths as everyone fought to reach safety. Marcus stood paralyzed for a moment, his scientist's mind trying to process what he was seeing. Nexus 7 was supposed to be neutral territory, protected by treaties signed by every major power in the sector. The Corvani had no business here, no reason to attack a civilian trading station. Unless his blood ran cold as he remembered the news reports from the Outer Rim. Worlds going dark. Colonies found empty except for mysterious crystalline formations. The Terran Federation's Xenoarchaeology Department had been quietly investigating rumors of ancient technology being unearthed on various worlds, technology that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Technology that Marcus himself had been sent to study. A child's scream cut through his racing thoughts. About 20 meters away, near a stall selling exotic fruits that pulsed with their own inner light, a small figure huddled behind an overturned table. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, with the delicate features and silvery skin of the Etherian species. Her large, prismatic eyes reflected terror as the chaos swirled around her, and Marcus could see her small body trembling. No adult was coming for her. The Etherian traders who had been at that stall were nowhere to be seen, probably having fled to the lower levels in the first wave of panic. The child was alone, abandoned in the stampede of terrified beings all thinking only of their own survival. Above them, the first Corvani ships touched down on the upper landing platforms. Through the dome, Marcus could see armored figures disembarking, tall, reptilian beings in environmental suits, carrying energy weapons that hummed with barely contained power. The Corvani were known for their efficiency. They would secure the station level by level, and anyone caught in the open would be captured, interrogated, or worse. Marcus looked at his escape route. The nearest emergency shelter was less than 50 meters away, down a wide corridor that led to the residential sections. He could make it easily. His diplomatic credentials might even protect him once the situation was sorted out. The smart thing, the rational thing, would be to run. Instead, he found himself moving toward the terrified child. His legs carried him forward without conscious thought, dodging panicked traders and abandoned cargo containers. A Threx nearly bowled him over in its rush to escape, its 6 legs clicking frantically on the stone floor. A flock of winged Avirians burst from their perches, filling the air with the sound of beating feathers and distress calls. Marcus reached the overturned table and dropped to his knees beside the Etherian child. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he'd thought, probably barely old enough to walk steadily. Her small hands were pressed over her pointed ears, trying to block out the chaos around them. "Hey," he said softly, not sure if his translator would render his words into something she could understand. Etherians were known to be highly intelligent, but developed their language skills later than most species. "Hey, it's okay." The child looked up at him with those huge, prismatic eyes. They shifted through colors like an oil slick, blue, green, purple, gold, as her emotions played across her features. She said something in the musical language of her people, words that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Marcus didn't need a translation to understand the meaning. "Help me." He glanced around quickly. The marketplace was nearly empty now, except for scattered goods and a few slower beings still making their way to safety. Above, he could hear the heavy footsteps of Corvani soldiers moving through the upper levels. They would be here in minutes, maybe less. "Come on," he said, reaching out his hand. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The child hesitated for a moment, studying his face. Marcus tried to project calm and safety the way he did when working with skittish alien wildlife. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds, she placed her tiny hand in his. Her skin was warm and smooth, with a texture like polished stone. The moment they touched, Marcus felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if a mild electrical current was flowing between them. The child's eyes widened, cycling rapidly through colors before settling on a steady gold that seemed to indicate surprise or recognition. "It's okay," he repeated, gently pulling her to her feet. "I've got you." They started toward the emergency corridor, but they'd only taken a few steps when the sound of breaking glass echoed through the marketplace. Marcus looked up to see Corvani soldiers rappelling through shattered sections of the dome, their environmental suits allowing them to ignore the brief atmospheric venting. They landed with practiced precision, immediately spreading out to secure the area. The nearest soldier, a massive Corvani with decorative scarring on his visible skin, spotted Marcus and the child immediately. His weapon, a pulse rifle that could burn through reinforced steel, swung in their direction. "Halt!" the soldier commanded, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. "All beings are to remain in position for processing." Marcus felt the child's hand tighten in his. She was trembling again, and he could hear her whimpering softly in her musical language. The translator box on his belt caught fragments. Scared, "Want mama, don't hurt." Every instinct told Marcus to comply. The Corvani were known for their military efficiency, but They weren't typically cruel to civilians who cooperated. If he and the child surrendered now, they would probably be processed, questioned, and eventually released when the situation was resolved. But as he looked down at the terrified little girl clinging to his hand, Marcus realized that probably wasn't good enough. The Corvani soldier was advancing, his weapons still trained on them. Behind him, more soldiers were spreading out through the marketplace, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't raiders looking for easy plunder. This was a military operation with specific objectives, which meant they weren't here by accident. They were looking for something or someone specific. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. The xenoarchaeological dig sites he'd been studying were scattered across this sector. Several had yielded artifacts that suggested the presence of a precursor species, beings who had possessed technology far beyond anything currently known. The Federation had classified most of his findings, but rumors had a way of spreading in the research community. If the Corvani were after precursor technology, they would want to question anyone who might have knowledge about it, including xenobiologists who had been working on related projects. The soldier was 20 meters away now, close enough that Marcus could see the predatory gleam in his reptilian eyes. "You will comply with processing procedures," he announced. "Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." Marcus looked down at the child again. She was staring up at him with those prismatic eyes, and he could see absolute trust reflected in their shifting colors. She believed he would protect her. She believed he could keep her safe. The rational part of his mind screamed that he was about to do something incredibly stupid. He was a scientist, not a soldier. He had no combat training, no weapons, no backup plan. The smart thing would be to surrender and hope for the best. But as the Corvani soldier raised his weapon to a more threatening position, Marcus Chun discovered something about himself that he'd never known before. When faced with a choice between his own safety and protecting an innocent child, there really wasn't a choice at all. He stepped in front of the little girl, spreading his arms wide to shield her with his body. "No," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "You're not taking her." The soldier's reptilian features showed surprise, then amusement. "Human," he said, the word carrying contempt. "You have no authority here." "Stand azide." I said no. Marcus felt the child pressing against his legs, her small hands gripping the fabric of his pants. She was saying something in Etherian, words that his translator couldn't quite catch, but which sounded like a prayer or a lullaby. The tingling sensation where she touched him was growing stronger, spreading up his legs and through his body like warmth from a cup of hot coffee on a cold morning. The Corvani soldier's amusement faded. He raised his weapon to full ready position, the targeting laser painting a red dot on Marcus's chest. "Final warning, human. Stand aside or be removed." "Dr. Chun." The voice came from behind the Corvani formation. Marcus turned to see Dr. Yesha, the Nexus 7-station administrator, approaching with her hands raised in a gesture of non-aggression. The elderly Altarian's blue-scaled skin had gone pale with stress, and her usually perfect diplomatic composure was cracking. "Dr. Chun, please," she called out. "Don't make this worse than it already is. These are professional soldiers. They're not here to hurt civilians." The Corvani soldier, who seemed to be in charge, distinguished by additional armor plating and rank insignia, gestured for his subordinate to lower his weapon slightly. "Administrator Yesha," he said with formal politeness, "we appreciate your cooperation. Our operation here is time-sensitive, and we require all beings to remain calm and compliant." "Of course, Commander," Dr. Yesha replied, her diplomatic training taking over despite the circumstances. "I'm sure we can resolve the situation quickly and peacefully. Dr. Chun is a valued researcher with proper credentials. Perhaps if you could explain what you're looking for." The commander's reptilian eyes focused on Marcus with new interest. "Dr. Chun," he repeated. "Marcus Chun, xenobiologist with the Terran Federation's Deep Survey Division." Marcus felt his stomach drop. They knew who he was. This wasn't a random raid. They were specifically looking for him. "I don't know what you want," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. "But whatever it is, it has nothing to do with her." He gestured slightly toward the child still hidden behind him. The commander studied Marcus for a long moment, then spoke into his suit's communication system in rapid Corvani. Marcus's translator caught fragments, confirmed, priority target, minimal resistance expected. Dr. Chun, the commander said, returning his attention to the standoff. You have information that is valuable to the hegemony. We require your cooperation in a research matter. Come with us voluntarily, and no harm will come to you or the civilian population of this station. And if I refuse? The commander's expression didn't change, but his hand moved to rest on his sidearm. That would be inadvisable. Marcus felt the child's grip tighten on his legs. She was no longer trembling. Instead, the strange tingling sensation was growing stronger, and he could feel a warmth building between them that seemed to flow from her small hands through his entire body. When he glanced down, he was startled to see that her prismatic eyes had settled on a brilliant silver color, and there was a faint luminescence beginning to emanate from her skin. Dr. Yeshan noticed it too. Her blue-scaled features went even paler, and she took an unconscious step backward. "Commander," she said urgently, "that child, she's not just any Etherian. Those markings, that luminescence, she's a noble bloodline. Possibly royalty." The commander's reptilian head snapped toward the child with new interest. "Explain." "The Etherian Collective is one of our most important trading partners," Dr. Yesha said quickly. "Their noble families have certain abilities, psychic capabilities that are highly developed from childhood. If that child is who I think she is." She didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus could see the wheels turning in the commander's mind. Taking a random civilian child was one thing. Kidnapping Etherian nobility was another matter entirely. The kind of diplomatic incident that could turn allies into enemies and expand a small military operation into a sector-wide conflict. But the commander was also looking at the child with a different kind of interest now. Marcus had heard rumors about Corvani experiments with psychic abilities, their attempts to weaponize telepathic species for intelligence gathering and battlefield coordination. An Etherian noble child, with her developing psychic powers, would be an incredibly valuable prize. "Step away from the child," Dr. Chun, the commander, ordered. "Both of you will be coming with us, but this complicates our extraction timeline." "No." The word came out of Marcus's mouth before he consciously decided to speak. The warmth flowing from the child had spread through his entire body now, and with it came a strange sense of clarity. He could see the whole situation laid out like a tactical diagram. The Corvani soldiers, their positions, their weapons, the escape routes, the civilians still hiding in the area. More than that, he could sense the child's emotions as if they were his own. Her terror at the soldiers, her desperate need for protection, her growing trust in him. And underneath it all, something else, a power that was awakening in response to the danger, something that made the air around them hum with potential energy. "I said no," Marcus repeated, his voice carrying a conviction that surprised him. "You want me? Fine. But she stays here under the protection of station security." The commander's patience was clearly wearing thin. He gestured to his soldiers, who began spreading out to surround Marcus and the child. "You misunderstand your situation, human. We are not negotiating. We are informing you of what will happen." "Marcus," Dr. Yesha called out desperately, "please, think about this rationally. The Corvani have superior numbers and firepower. You can't protect her if you're dead." Marcus knew she was right. He knew that what he was doing was hopeless, that he was about to get himself killed for a gesture that would ultimately accomplish nothing. The Corvani would take both him and the child, and his sacrifice would be meaningless. But as he stood there, feeling the child's small hands gripping his legs and the strange warmth of her developing psychic abilities flowing through him, Marcus Chun discovered that sometimes meaning wasn't the point. Sometimes you did the right thing simply because it was right, regardless of the consequences. "I'm not moving," he said quietly. The commander raised his sidearm, a weapon designed to incapacitate rather than kill. They wanted Marcus alive for questioning, after all. "So be it." That's when the child spoke. Her voice was still musical, still carrying the wind chime quality of Etherian speech, but there was something different about it now. Something that made every being in the marketplace, Corvani soldiers included, freeze in place as if they'd been struck by lightning. Marcus didn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning wash over him like a tide. It was a call, a signal, a message sent out on frequencies that only certain ears could hear. The child was no longer just hiding behind him for protection. She was actively reaching out, using abilities that she was probably too young to fully understand or control. High above the marketplace, something answered. The remaining intact sections of the dome began to vibrate, a harmonic resonance that started low and gradually built in intensity. The Corvani soldiers looked up in alarm, their weapons tracking toward the source of the sound, even though there was nothing visible to shoot at. Dr. Yesha's eyes went wide with recognition and fear. "Oh, stars preserve us," she whispered. "She's calling for her mother." The commander's reptilian features showed the first sign of genuine concern. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no significant Etherian military presence in this sector. Your intelligence, Dr. Yesha said with grim satisfaction, was incomplete. The vibration was growing stronger now, and Marcus could feel it in his bones. The child's grip on his legs was no longer gentle. Her small fingers were digging into the fabric of his pants with desperate strength, and the luminescence from her skin was brightening to the point where it was visible even in the marketplace's artificial lighting. Above them, shadows began to move across the dome. Ships, but not the graceful, artistic vessels that most species use for peaceful travel. These were Etherian warcraft, their organic curves and bioluminescent markings identifying them as belonging to the collective's military caste. They moved with the fluid precision of living things, their hulls seeming to shift and flow as they maneuvered through the asteroid's defense grid without triggering a single alarm. The lead ship was larger than the others, its hull decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Even Marcus, with his limited knowledge of Etherian culture, could recognize the markings of high nobility. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a royal response to an act of aggression against one of their own. The commander was barking orders into his communication system, trying to coordinate with his ships above and establish some kind of defensive perimeter. But the Etherian vessels moved like nothing Marcus had ever seen before, phasing through solid matter as if the station's hull didn't exist, their bioweapons charging with energy that made the air itself sing. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Yesha called out urgently, "you need to get that child to safety." When the shooting starts, she never finished the sentence. The lead Etherian ship had descended through the dome as if it were made of mist rather than transparent aluminum, its hull solidifying again only when it was fully inside the marketplace. It settled onto the stone floor with impossible grace, its landing legs extending from its organic hull like the legs of some massive, beautiful insect. A hatch opened in the ship's side, revealing not a mechanical airlock, but what looked like a dilating iris. From within the vessel's bioluminescent interior, a figure emerged. Marcus had seen Etherians before, of course. Nexus 7 was a major trading hub, and representatives of most species passed through on a regular basis. But he had never seen an Etherian like this. She was tall and elegant, with the characteristic silvery skin and prismatic eyes of her species, but where most Etherians seemed delicate and ethereal, she radiated power. Her movements were fluid yet controlled, like a dancer who was also a trained killer. The patterns of bioluminescence beneath her skin were more complex and vibrant than anything Marcus had seen before, and they pulsed with what could only be described as barely contained fury. She wore armor that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, its organic curves following the lines of her body while providing protection that would probably stop anything short of a plasma cannon. In her hands, she carried weapons that hummed with psychic energy, their bioluminescent cores indicating that they were attuned to her specific mental patterns. This was Vexhara, the Etherean War Mother whose name was whispered in fear across 3-star systems. The general who had broken the Corvani advance at the Battle of Stellar Grave. The warrior queen whose tactical brilliance was matched only by her protective fury when it came to her people. She was also, Marcus realized with growing certainty, the mother of the child clinging to his legs. Vexhara's prismatic eyes swept the marketplace, taking in the scattered Corvani soldiers, the cowering station personnel, and, finally, settling on Marcus and her daughter. For a moment that stretched into eternity, those eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that seemed to look straight through to his soul. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the same musical quality as her daughter's, but amplified by fury and maternal fear. "Oh," she said, each word precise and deadly. "Dares threaten my child?" The Corvani commander, to his credit, maintained his composure even in the face of what was clearly a completely unexpected development. "War Mother Vexhara," he said formally, "your presence here is unexpected. This is a routine security operation. We have no quarrel with the Etherean Collective." Vexhara's eyes never left Marcus and her daughter, but her response was directed at the commander. "Routine security operations," she said softly, "do not typically involve threatening children." "The child was not threatened," the commander replied. "We were attempting to secure the area when this human," he gestured at Marcus, "refused to comply with lawful orders." For the first time since her arrival, Vexhara looked directly at Marcus. Her prismatic eyes cycled through colors as she studied him. Surprise, confusion, and something that might have been approval. She could see, Marcus realized, that her daughter was not only unharmed but was actively drawing strength and comfort from their contact. "This human," she said slowly, "placed himself between armed soldiers and my daughter. He interfered with a military operation," the commander insisted. Vexhara was quiet for a long moment, her eyes still fixed on Marcus. Around the marketplace, her soldiers had taken position with weapons drawn, surrounding the Corvani forces, but not yet opening fire. The tension was thick enough to cut with a blade, and Marcus could feel everyone waiting for her decision. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "No one," she said, each word falling like a hammer blow, "threatens my daughter and lives." The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 seconds. Marcus never saw most of it. The moment Vexhara spoke, the child pressed her face against his legs, and the world around them seemed to slow and blur. He had brief impressions of movement. Etherean soldiers flowing through the marketplace like liquid light, bioweapons discharging with sounds like singing crystals, Corvani forces attempting to establish defensive positions that dissolved before they could be completed. When his vision cleared, it was over. The surviving Corvani soldiers, and there weren't many, were on their knees with their hands behind their heads, surrounded by Etherean warriors whose weapons hummed with readiness. The commander himself was unconscious, his armor cracked, and his reptilian features slack with the aftereffects of a psychic stun weapon. Vexhara stood over the fallen soldiers like an avenging angel, her bioluminescent patterns still pulsing with the energy of battle. But when she turned toward Marcus and her daughter, her expression softened into something approaching amazement. She approached slowly, as if afraid that any sudden movement might break the spell that had kept her child safe. When she was close enough to touch, she knelt down to bring herself to the little girl's eye level. "Zara," she said softly, using what Marcus assumed was the child's name. "My little star, are you hurt?" The child, Zara, finally released her grip on Marcus's legs and ran to her mother's arms. The reunion was everything Marcus had hoped for. Tears of relief, whispered words in musical Etherean, the kind of pure joy that transcended species barriers. But even as mother and daughter embraced, Marcus noticed that Zara kept looking back at him, her prismatic eyes shifting between him and Vexhara, as if she were trying to communicate something important. Finally, Vexhara looked up at Marcus, and he saw something in her expression that he couldn't quite identify. Gratitude, certainly. But there's something else there, something deeper and more complex. You shielded my daughter, she said simply. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. You faced armed soldiers with no weapons of your own. You risked your life for a child you had never met, of a species not your own. Anyone would have done the same thing, Marcus managed to say. Vexhara's expression suggested otherwise. She rose to her feet, still holding Zara, and studied Marcus with those shifting prismatic eyes. No, she said finally. Not anyone. What you did was extraordinary. Around them, Etherian soldiers were efficiently securing the area and tending to the few injured civilians. Dr. Yesha was speaking rapidly with what appeared to be a senior officer, probably trying to salvage some kind of diplomatic solution from the disaster. But Marcus found himself focused entirely on the mother and child before him. My daughter, Vexhara continued, has certain gifts, psychic abilities that are still developing. When she is in danger, she instinctively reaches out for protection, for strength. Usually, this connection can only be made with other Etherians. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. But she connected with me. Yes. Vexhara's eyes never left his face. The bond that was formed between you, such things are not easily broken. In Etherian culture, when a warrior shields a child in battle, when that child accepts their protection on a psychic level. She paused, as if searching for the right words. There are obligations, debts that must be honored. I don't understand. Vexhara looked down at Zara, who was watching the conversation with those large, intelligent eyes. The child said something in rapid Etherian, her voice bright with excitement. Vexhara's response was gentle but firm, clearly explaining something important. My daughter, Vexhara said, turning back to Marcus, believes that you are her guardian now. The psychic bond that was formed during the crisis has convinced her that you are meant to be part of our family, our clan. She wants. Vexhara paused again, and for the first time since her arrival, she looked uncertain. She wants you to come home with us. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his world. What? I know it sounds impossible, Vexhara said quickly. You have your own life, your own responsibilities. But the bond that was formed, it cannot be simply dismissed. Zara will suffer if it is severed too abruptly. And our laws, our culture. She trailed off, clearly struggling with concepts that didn't translate easily. Dr. Yesha chose that moment to approach, her diplomatic training evident in her careful, non-threatening posture. War Mother, she said respectfully, I've been in contact with the Nexus 7 Security Council. They're prepared to classify this incident as an unprovoked attack by Corvani forces. Dr. Chin's actions will be recorded as defending a civilian child under station protection protocols. Vexhara nodded acknowledgement, but didn't take her eyes off Marcus. That is acceptable, but it does not resolve the primary issue. The bond, Dr. Yesha said with understanding. Yes, I can see the psychic resonance even now. It's quite remarkable, actually. Interspecies psychic bonding is theoretically possible, but rarely observed in practice. Marcus looked down at Zara, who smiled up at him with innocent trust, and then back at Vexhara, whose expression suggested that she was dealing with a problem that had no easy solution. Around them, the cleanup from the battle continued, but Marcus felt as if he were standing in the eye of a hurricane, cut off from the normal world by forces he didn't understand. What exactly are you asking? He said finally. Vexhara's response was careful, measured. According to Etherian law and custom, you have become Zara's guardian protector. This is a sacred bond, recognized by our people for millennia. To honor it properly, you would need to come to our home world to learn our ways and take your place within our clan structure. And if I refuse? For the first time, Vexhara looked genuinely pained. The bond cannot be forced, she said quietly. But it also cannot be easily broken. Zara will spend her life feeling incomplete, searching for the guardian who abandoned her. And you, she studied his face intently. You will find yourself drawn back to her, again and again. The psychic connection works both ways. Marcus felt as if the universe had just shifted around him, rearranging itself into patterns he couldn't comprehend. This morning, he had been a simple xenobiologist studying crystal formations on a peaceful trading station. Now he was being invited, or compelled, to join an alien warrior clan because of a split-second decision to protect a child. The rational part of his mind was screaming that this was insane. He had a career, obligations, a life waiting for him back in Federation space. He couldn't just abandon everything to play house with aliens, no matter how noble their culture or how cute their children. But as he looked down at Zara, who was still watching him with those trusting, prismatic eyes, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected. The thought of walking away from her, of breaking the connection that had formed between them during those terrifying moments, actually caused him physical pain. It was as if some essential part of himself was tied to this small, alien child. "How long?" he asked quietly. Vexhara's expression showed relief that he was even considering the possibility. The initial bonding period typically lasts one standard cycle, about 14 months in your measurement. During that time, you would live with our clan, learn our customs and language, and allow the bond to stabilize. After that, she shrugged gracefully. The choice would be yours. Some guardian protectors choose to remain permanently. Others return to their own lives once the bond has matured enough to function across distance. 14 months, more than a year of his life, given over to alien customs and responsibilities that he didn't understand. The Terran Federation wouldn't hold his position that long. By the time he returned, his research would have been reassigned and his career would be effectively over. But as he thought about it, Marcus realized that his research had probably just ended anyway. The Corvani attack on Nexus 7, the clear indication that they were specifically looking for information about his work with precursor artifacts. His involvement in classified xenoarchaeology was no longer a secret. He would be debriefed, reassigned to safer projects, maybe even placed under protective custody until the political situation stabilized. Dr. Chun, Dr. Yesha, said softly, "I should mention that the Federation Diplomatic Corps has already been contacted about this situation, given the potential implications for human-Etherian relations." She paused diplomatically. "Your superiors are very interested in any opportunity to strengthen ties with the collective." Marcus looked at her sharply. "Are you saying this is a political assignment?" "I'm saying," Dr. Yesha replied carefully, "that your government would not object to you accepting War Mother Vexhara's invitation. In fact, they might consider it a valuable diplomatic opportunity." So that was it then. His choice was between abandoning a psychically bonded alien child who trusted him completely, or accepting an assignment that would essentially exile him from human space for over a year. Both options would end his career as he knew it, but only one would let him live with himself afterward. Marcus looked up at Vexhara, who was watching him with an expression of hopeful uncertainty. She was, he realized, just as much a prisoner of this situation as he was. Her daughter had formed a bond with a complete stranger, and Etherian culture demanded that she honor that bond even if it meant bringing a potentially dangerous alien into her family. "If I agree to this," Marcus said slowly, "what exactly would be expected of me?" "You would learn our language and customs," Vexhara replied. "You would train in basic defensive techniques. We are a warrior culture, and all adults are expected to be capable of protecting children. You would participate in clan activities and ceremonies." She paused. "And you would help me raise my daughter." The simplicity of that last statement hit Marcus harder than all the talk of psychic bonds and cultural obligations. Strip away the alien politics and exotic circumstances, and what she was really asking was whether he was willing to be a father figure to a little girl who had no one else. Marcus looked down at Zara again. She had been listening to the adult conversation with the intense concentration that children brought to discussions about their own fate. Now she reached out and took his hand again, and once more he felt that strange, warm, tingling sensation as their minds touched. through the connection, he felt her emotions as clearly as if they were his own. Fear that he would leave her, hope that he would stay, trust that whatever he decided would be what was best for her. And underneath it all, a love that was innocent and absolute and completely unearned. It was that last emotion that decided him. "Okay," Marcus heard himself say. "I'll come with you." Zara's face lit up with joy, and her bioluminescent patterns brightened until she was practically glowing with happiness. Vexhara's expression showed a complex mixture of relief, gratitude, and something that might have been the beginning of respect. "There will be challenges," she warned. "Our ways are not your ways. Some of my people will not understand why I have brought a human into our clan. You will be tested, questioned, possibly even challenged." "I understand," Marcus said, though he suspected he really didn't. "And the bond itself?" Vexhara hesitated. "It will continue to grow and strengthen. You will find yourself changing in ways you cannot predict. The connection with Zara will affect how you think, how you perceive the world around you. Some Guardians find this difficult to accept." Marcus nodded, trying to project more confidence than he felt. "I can handle it." Vexhara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps you can," she said. "You have already shown remarkable strength of will. And Zara chose you for a reason. Her instincts about such things are rarely wrong." Around them, the cleanup operations were winding down. The captured Corvani soldiers were being prepared for transport to a Federation detention facility, while their ships above were being secured by Etherian forces. Dr. Yesha was coordinating with various diplomatic officials, no doubt trying to prevent this incident from sparking a larger conflict. But for Marcus, all of that seemed to be happening in a different world. His focus was entirely on the small alien child, still holding his hand, and the fierce warrior mother who had just invited him to join their family. "When do we leave?" he asked. Vexhara's smile was the first genuinely warm expression he'd seen from her. "Immediately," she said. "The longer we remain here, the greater the chance that the Corvani will mount another operation. My ship can have us back to Etherian space within 2 days." Marcus nodded, then looked around at his abandoned research station. A lifetime of work reduced to scattered equipment and forgotten specimens. It should have felt like a loss, but instead he felt oddly liberated. For the first time in years, he was about to do something that wasn't part of a research plan or career advancement strategy. He was about to try being a father. As they walked toward Vexhara's ship, Zara chattering excitedly in Etherian while maintaining her grip on his hand, Marcus Chin reflected on how dramatically his life had just changed. This morning, he had been a solitary scientist focused on ancient artifacts and theoretical xenobiology. Tonight, he would be traveling to an alien homeworld as the guardian protector of a psychically gifted child and the newest member of a warrior clan led by the most feared general in 3-star systems. It was, he thought with surprising calm, going to be an interesting year. The first thing Marcus learned about Etherian space travel was that their ships were alive. Not metaphorically, not in the sense that spacers sometimes talked about their vessels having personality, but literally biologically alive. As Vexhara's flagship carried them through hyperspace toward the Etherian homeworld, Marcus could feel the ship's pulse beneath his feet, hear the whisper of its breathing through the organic corridors, see the gentle glow of its nervous system through translucent walls. It was beautiful and disturbing in equal measure. "The ship's name is Harmony of Stars," Vexhara explained as she guided him through passages that curved and flowed like the interior of some massive organism. "She's been my companion for over 30 years, grown from seedling form when I first achieved command rank." Marcus ran his hand along the smooth, warm wall of the corridor, feeling the subtle texture of living tissue beneath his palm. "How does it work? I mean, how do you control something that's alive?" "Partnership," Vexhara said simply. "The ship and I share thoughts, intentions. She understands what I need and provides it. In exchange, I care for her, protect her, ensure she has the nutrients and energy needed to thrive." She paused, glancing at Zara, who was skipping ahead of them, completely at home in the organic environment. It's similar to the bond you now share with my daughter." The comparison made Marcus uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite say why. The psychic connection with Zara was unlike anything he'd experienced before, a constant, low-level awareness of her emotions and well-being that had surprised him with its intensity. Even now, separated by the length of the corridor, he could sense her excitement at showing him her favorite hiding spots throughout the ship. They passed through what Vexhara called the heart chamber, where the ship's central nervous system was visible through transparent walls. The organ pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reminded Marcus of deep-sea creatures from Earth, and he could swear he felt the ship's attention turn toward him as they walked past, studying this new passenger with alien curiosity. "Does she approve?" Marcus asked, only half joking. Vexhara paused, her head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. "She finds you interesting. Your neural patterns are different from ours, more chaotic, but also more adaptable. She's curious about how you'll integrate with the clan." "And you?" Marcus asked quietly. "What do you think about how I'll integrate?" Vexhara was quiet for a long moment as they continued walking. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of consideration. "You risked your life for my daughter without hesitation. That speaks to character that cannot be taught or faked. But character alone may not be enough for what lies ahead." They emerged into a larger chamber that served as the ship's observation deck. The walls here were completely transparent, offering a stunning view of hyperspace streaming past in ribbons of light and color. Zara had pressed herself against the barrier, watching the display with obvious delight, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to mirror the colors outside. "Tell me about your people," Marcus said. "Your culture. What should I expect when we reach your homeworld?" Vexhara moved to stand beside him at the observation wall, her warrior's posture relaxing slightly in the peaceful environment. "The Etherian collective is old, Dr. Chun, older than most species in this galaxy. We evolved on a world where cooperation and psychic harmony were necessary for survival. Our society is built around clan structures, with each clan specializing in different aspects of civilization: warriors, scholars, artists, engineers." "And your clan?" "The Starfire clan has been the primary military caste for over 2 millennia. We are responsible for protecting Etherian space and our trading partners from external threats." Her voice carried pride, but also a hint of weariness. "It is an honor that comes with a heavy burden." Marcus watched Zara gesture excitedly at a particularly bright formation of hyperspace phenomena. "And she'll be expected to follow that path?" "Eventually, yes. All children born to warrior clans undergo training in combat and tactics from an early age. But, Zara..." Vexhara's expression softened as she looked at her daughter. "Zara has gifts that extend beyond the typical warrior path. Her psychic abilities are remarkably strong, even for one of noble blood. She may become a battle guide, a strategic coordinator who can link the minds of multiple warriors in combat." The casual way she discussed her 5-year-old daughter's future military career made Marcus's stomach clench. "She's just a child." "Yes," Vexhara agreed, "and she will remain a child for many years to come. But among our people, preparation for adult responsibilities begins early. It is not cruelty, it is necessity. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and those who are unprepared do not survive." Marcus thought about his own childhood on Earth, spent in laboratories and libraries surrounded by books and scientific equipment instead of weapons training and combat scenarios. "What about play? About just being a kid?" Vexhara smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw genuine warmth in the expression. "You think we're cold, militaristic. This is a common misunderstanding. Watch." She spoke to Zara in musical Etherian, and the child's face lit up with delight. She ran to a section of the observation deck where a panel in the floor slid open, revealing what looked like a garden growing directly from the ship's living tissue. Plants that glowed with their own inner light swayed in a non-existent breeze, while small creatures that might have been insects or might have been tiny spirits fluttered between the branches. Zara began to sing, a wordless melody that seemed to encourage the garden to grow brighter, the creatures to dance more energetically. It was play, but play that developed her psychic abilities. Fun that served a greater purpose. Everything we do serves multiple functions, Vexhara explained. Training that is also play. Art that is also meditation. Combat techniques that are also dance. This is how we have survived and thrived for so long. Marcus watched Zara conduct her impromptu orchestra of plants and light creatures, feeling the psychic connection between them pulse with her joy. Despite his reservations about the military aspects of Etherian culture, he had to admit there was something beautiful about a society that could integrate purpose and play so seamlessly. What will be expected of me? He asked. Initially learning. Language, customs, basic defensive techniques. You'll be assigned a mentor from the clan council, someone who can guide your integration while I handle my military duties. Vexhara paused. I should warn you that not everyone will welcome your presence. Some will see you as a weakness, a distraction from Zara's proper development. Others will view you as a potential threat, an unknown element in our careful social balance. And will you see me as? Vexhara turned to study him directly, her prismatic eyes shifting through colors as she considered the question. I see you as someone who put himself at risk for my daughter when he had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That alone earns you a chance to prove yourself. What you make of that chance? She shrugged elegantly. That remains to be seen. Over the next 2 days of travel, Marcus began to understand the complexity of what he'd agreed to. The ship itself was a microcosm of Etherian society. Every surface, every system, every interaction served multiple purposes and reflected deeper cultural values. The crew moved through their duties with a fluid coordination that spoke of both extensive training and psychic harmonization. Marcus watched them work and began to realize that much of their efficiency came from their ability to share thoughts and intentions directly, eliminating the need for verbal communication in many situations. He also began to experience the deeper effects of his bond with Zara. The connection between them was growing stronger, allowing him to sense not just her emotions, but sometimes her actual thoughts. It was overwhelming at first. The alien nature of a child's mind, combined with psychic abilities he didn't understand, created a constant undercurrent of sensation that left him feeling off balance. Vexhara noticed his discomfort during the second day. The bond is stabilizing, she explained as they shared a meal in the ship's dining area. This is normal, but it can be disorienting for those not raised with psychic connections. How do you stand it? Marcus asked, rubbing his temples against a persistent headache that seemed to come and go with Zara's emotional state. The constant awareness of someone else's thoughts. Practice, Vexhara said simply, and understanding that the connection is not a loss of self, but an expansion of it. You're not becoming less human. You are becoming more than human, more than any individual consciousness could be alone. The concept was difficult for Marcus to grasp, trained as he was in human notions of individual identity and personal boundaries. But as the journey continued, he began to notice subtle changes in his own perceptions. Colors seemed more vivid. Sounds carried emotional undertones he'd never noticed before, and his awareness of the people around him extended beyond what his normal senses should have been able to detect. It was during the third day that he first experienced what Vexhara called the joining. They were in the ship's training area, a large chamber with adaptive surfaces that could simulate various combat environments. Vexhara had been showing Marcus some basic defensive techniques, movements that were part martial art and part dance when Zara had asked to join them. She's too young for formal training, Vexhara had explained, but she enjoys the movement exercises. What followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. As the three of them moved through the flowing sequences, their individual consciousnesses began to blur together. Marcus found himself anticipating movements before they were made, responding to attacks that hadn't yet been launched, moving in perfect harmony with two beings whose thought patterns were completely alien to his human experience. For nearly 10 minutes, they functioned as a single entity with 3 bodies. Marcus felt Vexhara's warrior's instincts, her tactical awareness, her protective fury held in careful check. He felt Zara's innocent joy in the movement, her absolute trust in both her companions, her growing psychic abilities reaching out to embrace them both. And they felt him, his analytical mind, his careful scientist's approach to learning, his deep-seated determination to protect those under his care. When the exercise ended, Marcus found himself sitting on the floor, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. Vexhara knelt beside him, her expression showing both concern and something that might have been approval. "That was unexpected," she said quietly. "Full joining usually takes months to achieve, and rarely with someone outside our species." Marcus looked at Zara, who was bouncing excitedly nearby, apparently unaffected by what had just happened. "Is she okay? Did I hurt her somehow?" "Quite the opposite," Vexhara assured him. "The bond between you is stronger than I realized. Much stronger. This could complicate your integration with the clan." "How so?" Vexhara helped him to his feet, her touch sending a small aftershock of psychic connection through his awareness. Joining of that depth usually only occurs between life-bonded partners or between a parent and child. For you to achieve it so quickly, with so little training. She shook her head. "Some will see it as a sign that you're truly meant to be part of our family. Others will view it as dangerous, uncontrolled." That evening, as they prepared for their final approach to the Etherian homeworld, Marcus stood once again in the observation deck, watching the swirling lights of hyperspace give way to the ordered patterns of normal space. Vexhara had joined him, leaving Zara in the care of the ship's crew for her evening meal and rest period. "Are you having second thoughts?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question honestly. The past few days had shown him just how alien this new life would be, how much he would have to change and adapt to function in Etherian society. The psychic connections were overwhelming, the cultural expectations were complex, and he was beginning to realize that the simple act of protecting a child had bound him to consequences he couldn't have imagined. But when he reached out with his new awareness, when he felt Zara's sleeping presence somewhere deep in the ship, radiating contentment and trust, he knew there was only one answer he could give. "No," he said. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Vexhara nodded, and for the first time, her expression showed something that might have been relief. "Good, because we have arrived." The Etherian homeworld of Lysara hung before them like a living jewel, its surface swirling with colors that had no names in any human language. Cities floated in the atmosphere, connected by streams of light that pulsed with the rhythm of a planetary heartbeat. Even from orbit, Marcus could see that this was a world shaped entirely by its inhabitants, where the line between natural and artificial had been erased millennia ago. "Welcome to Lysara," Vexhara said. "Welcome to your new home." As the ship began its descent through the planet's aurora-colored atmosphere, Marcus felt a mixture of anticipation and terror that had nothing to do with the psychic bond. He was about to meet an entire civilization, to find his place in a society that had evolved along completely different lines from humanity. The ship settled onto a landing platform that rose from what looked like a forest of crystalline trees, their branches singing in harmonious tones as the vessel's living hull made contact with specialized docking tendrils. Through the transparent walls, Marcus could see figures approaching, tall, elegant Etherians whose bioluminescent patterns identified them as members of various clans and castes. "The welcoming committee," Vexhara explained, though her tone suggested this was more formal proceeding than celebration. "They've come to evaluate you, to determine whether you're worthy of clan membership." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "What happens if they decide I'm not?" Vexhara's expression was carefully neutral. "Then you will be granted guest status and transport back to human space once the bond with Zara has been safely severed. And Zara will spend her life feeling incomplete," Vexhara said quietly. "But she will survive. Children are resilient, even when their hearts are broken." The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a physical burden. This wasn't just about his own future anymore. It was about the well-being of a little girl who trusted him completely. Zara appeared at his side, her small hand slipping into his as the ship's crew prepared for disembarkation. Through their connection, he felt her excitement at coming home, but also her worry about how the clan would receive him. Even at her young age, she understood that her happiness depended on their acceptance of the strange human she had bonded with. "It will be well," she said in carefully pronounced standard, one of the few phrases she had learned during their journey. Her prismatic eyes looked up at him with absolute faith. "You are my guardian protector. They will see." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, drawing strength from her confidence. "Yes," he said, "they will see." The airlock dilated, revealing the alien landscape of Lysara and the assembled representatives of the Starfire clan. As Marcus stepped onto the platform with Zara at his side and Vexhara leading the way, he felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes evaluating him, measuring him, deciding his fate. The next few hours would determine whether he had gained a new family or lost everything he'd tried to protect. The eldest member of the welcoming committee stepped forward, his ancient features showing the deep lines and complex bioluminescent scarring that marked a lifetime of honor and service. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute leadership. "I am Theron Vass, voice of the Starfire clan," he announced in accented but clear standard. "You are the human who claims bond right with our bloodline." "I am Marcus Chun," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "And I don't claim anything. I'm here because Zara asked me to be." The clan leader's prismatic eyes studied Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. Around the platform, other clan members watched silently, their bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as expressions of curiosity, suspicion, and evaluation. "The circumstances of your arrival are unusual," Theron Vass continued. "Bond right with nobility has never been granted to an outsider, let alone one of alien species. Some among our people question whether such a thing is even possible." Vexhara stepped forward, her warriors bearing evident in every line of her posture. With respect, voice, the bond was not granted. It was formed in battle, under circumstances that left no choice. My daughter's life was threatened, and this human placed himself between her and harm without regard for his own safety. "So we've been told," Theron Vass acknowledged. "But protection in crisis does not automatically confer bond right." The child may have been grateful, confused her emotions in the stress of the moment. Zara chose that moment to speak, her young voice carrying clearly across the platform. She spoke in rapid Etherian, her words flowing like music, and Marcus felt her emotions through their connection. Indignation at the suggestion that her feelings weren't real, determination to make the adults understand. The effect on the assembled clan members was immediate and dramatic. Their bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors that Marcus couldn't interpret, but the emotional resonance was clear: surprise, recognition, and something that might have been awe. Theron Vass knelt to bring himself to Zara's eye level, his ancient features showing newfound respect. "Little star," he said gently, "are you certain of what you feel? Bond right is not a game or a childhood fancy. It is a sacred connection that will shape your entire life." Zara nodded firmly, then took Marcus's hand and placed it on her forehead in what Marcus recognized as a formal gesture of trust. The psychic connection between them flared to life, and suddenly everyone present could sense the depth and reality of their bond. Marcus felt the collective intake of breath from the assembled clan members as they experienced the connection secondhand. Through Zara's touch, they could sense his genuine care for her, his determination to protect her, and the way their minds had learned to work in harmony. When Zara removed her hand, the silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, Theron Vass rose to his feet, his expression showing a complex mixture of acceptance and concern. "The bond is real," he announced, "and it is strong, perhaps stronger than any we have seen in recent memory." He looked directly at Marcus. But reality does not automatically confer wisdom. You are alien to our ways, ignorant of our customs and traditions. How can you guide a child of noble blood when you understand nothing of what she must become? I can't, Marcus said honestly. Not alone. That's why I'm here, to learn, to become worthy of the trust she's placed in me. And if you fail, if our ways prove too alien, our expectations too demanding. Marcus looked down at Zora, who was watching the exchange with the intense concentration of a child whose future was being decided by adults. Through their bond, he felt her absolute faith in him, her certainty that he would find a way to make this work. Then, I'll keep trying until I succeed, he said, because walking away isn't an option. Theron Vass studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. You will be granted provisional acceptance into the Starfire clan. You'll be assigned quarters, a mentor, and access to our training facilities. Your progress will be evaluated at regular intervals, and final acceptance will depend on your ability to master our ways and prove yourself worthy of bond right with nobility. The words were formal, official, but Marcus heard the underlying message clearly. This is your chance. Don't waste it. Thank you, Marcus said. I won't let you down. You will not let her down, Theron Vass corrected, gesturing toward Zara. That is all that matters. As the welcoming ceremony concluded and the clan members began to disperse, Marcus found himself surrounded by a small group of Etherians who would apparently be his guides in this new life. Vexhara made the introductions of a weapons master who would teach him combat techniques, a scholar who would help him learn the language and customs, and a mind guide who would help him understand and control his developing psychic abilities. But it was the final introduction that surprised him most. This is Kale, the Vexhara said, gesturing to a young Etherian whose bioluminescent patterns marked him as barely past adolescence. He will be your primary mentor and guide. Kalda stepped forward with the careful politeness of someone trying to make a good first impression despite personal reservations. Honored Guardian, he said formally. I am privileged to assist in your integration. Thank you, Marcus replied, noting the subtle tension in the young Etherian's posture. I appreciate your help. As they walked away from the landing platform toward the floating spires of the clan settlement, Kalda fell into step beside Marcus. If I may ask, he said quietly, do you have any experience with warrior cultures? Any background in combat or tactical thinking? None whatsoever, Marcus admitted. I'm a scientist. My idea of conflict resolution usually involves peer review and scholarly debate. Kalda's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as dismay. This may be more challenging than anticipated. Ahead of them, Zara skipped along beside her mother, chattering excitedly about showing Marcus her favorite places in the clan territory. Through their bond, Marcus could feel her joy at being home, but also her continued worry about his acceptance by her people. As they entered the main settlement, a series of graceful spires connected by bridges that seemed to be grown rather than built, Marcus realized that the hardest part of his journey was just beginning. Protecting Zara from immediate physical danger had been instinctive, almost easy compared to what lay ahead. Now he had to prove that he could protect her future, guide her development, and find his place in a society that had evolved along completely different lines from anything he'd ever known. He had to become not just a guardian, but a teacher, a mentor, a father figure to a child whose potential he was only beginning to understand. And he had to do it all while learning to be something he'd never imagined, a warrior in a culture that had turned conflict into an art form, surrounded by people who could literally read his thoughts and emotions. As they approached his new quarters, a modest but comfortable space in one of the middle spires, Marcus felt a mixture of determination and terror that was becoming familiar. Every day would bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail or succeed, new tests of his commitment to the bond he'd formed with Zara. But as he felt her hand slip into his once again, and sensed her complete trust in his ability to adapt and grow, Marcus Chun realized that he never wanted to succeed at anything more in his entire life. The real test of his worthiness was about to begin. The first assassination attempt came on Marcus's 6th day on Lasara. He was in the clan's meditation garden, a serene space where crystalline formations hummed in harmony with the planet's magnetic field, when his developing psychic awareness suddenly screamed danger. The sensation was like ice water flooding his veins, and he rolled sideways just as an energy bolt seared through the space where his head had been. "Zara down," he shouted, not bothering to look for the source of the attack. The child was 20 meters away, playing among the singing crystals, and through their bond he felt her confusion spike into fear. 2 more energy bolts followed the first, fired from concealed positions among the garden's exotic vegetation. Marcus dove behind a large crystal formation, his mind racing to process what was happening. Someone was trying to kill him, here in the heart of the Starfire clan's territory, in broad daylight. The attack stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Marcus waited, every nerve ending alert for the slightest sign of movement, but the garden had gone silent except for the gentle humming of the crystals. Even it seemed muted now, as if the living stones sensed the violence that had disturbed their peace. "Guardian Marcus!" Kael'da's voice called from somewhere behind him. "Are you injured?" "No." Marcus called back, still not moving from his protective position. "But someone just tried to barbecue me." Footsteps approached, multiple sets, moving with the coordinated precision that marked trained warriors. Marcus risked a glance around his crystal shelter and saw Kael'da leading a squad of clan security, their weapons drawn and their bioluminescent patterns displaying the angry reds and oranges that indicated battle readiness. "The attackers have withdrawn," Kael'da reported as he reached Marcus's position. "Our sensors detected 3 individuals using stealth technology, but they vanished into the deep forest before we could intercept." Marcus stood slowly, his legs unsteady with adrenaline. Across the garden, Zara was being comforted by another clan member, her small body shaking with the aftershock of shared terror through their psychic bond. The sight of her distress made Marcus's protective instincts flare to life with surprising intensity. "Who?" he asked quietly. Kael'da's expression was grim. "Unknown. But the weapons were Corvani-made, modified for stealth operations. The hegemony found me." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the garden's evening air. "They tracked me here." "Perhaps," Kael'da agreed. "But there are other possibilities. The Corvani sell weapons to many groups, including some among our own people who might prefer that your integration fail." The implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You're saying other Ethereans want me dead?" "Not dead, necessarily," Kael'da said carefully, "but removed. There are those who believe that allowing an alien into our clan, especially one bonded to nobility, sets a dangerous precedent. They might hope that a failed assassination attempt would convince you to leave voluntarily." Marcus looked at Zara, who was now being carried toward them by her escort, her prismatic eyes wide with lingering fear. Through their bond, he could feel her desperate need for reassurance, her terror that something might happen to him. "And if I don't leave voluntarily?" Kael'da's silence was answer enough. That evening, Marcus found himself in an emergency council session with the clan leadership. The meeting was held in the Heart Chamber, a circular room at the center of the main spire where important decisions were made. The walls were lined with bioluminescent displays that showed the clan's history, great battles, honored ancestors, and the sacred obligations that bound them together. Theron Vass presided over the gathering, his ancient features grave with concern. Around the circle sat the other clan leaders, weapons masters, scholars, tactical coordinators, and representatives of the various bloodlines that made up the Starfire clan. Vexhara was there too, though her position as an active military commander rather than clan elder placed her in a secondary role. "The attack confirms what many of us feared," announced Veldar, the clan's senior weapons master. His scarred features and aggressive bioluminescent patterns marked him as someone who had seen extensive combat. "The human's presence here has made us a target." His alien nature draws threats that endanger our entire community. The threats existed before Marcus arrived, Vexhara countered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had actually faced the Corvani in battle. The hegemony has been expanding aggressively for months. They would have found reasons to target us regardless. But would they have targeted our children? Velder shot back. Would they have brought assassins into our meditation gardens, into spaces sacred to our young ones? Marcus listened to the debate with growing understanding of the position he'd put the clan in. His presence hadn't just complicated their social dynamics. It had made them legitimate military targets in a conflict that was growing larger by the day. Perhaps, he said quietly, I should leave. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. Marcus felt the weight of their attention, the complex mixture of emotions his words had triggered. Some showed relief at his offer, others disappointment, and a few, including Vexhara, displayed outright anger. You would abandon your bond, right? Theron Vass asked carefully. Marcus thought about Zara, probably asleep in her chambers above them, still radiating residual fear through their psychic connection. If it would keep her safe, keep all of you safe, yes. And what of the child, the voice continued. What of the sacred obligation you accepted? I accepted it to protect her, Marcus said. If leaving protects her better than staying. You understand nothing. The voice belonged to Miralife, an elderly scholar whose bioluminescent patterns indicated deep contemplation and ancient wisdom. The bond between guardian and child is not a simple contract that could be dissolved when convenient. It is a living connection, as real as the nervous system that connects your brain to your hand. She gestured, and the room's bioluminescent displays shifted to show anatomical diagrams that Marcus didn't recognize. When a psychic bond is formed and then severed abruptly, both parties suffer trauma that can last lifetimes. The child will spend her years feeling incomplete, searching for the missing piece of herself. And she fixed Marcus with a stare that seemed to look straight through him. You will find yourself drawn back to her again and again, no matter how far you travel. The connection cannot be broken by distance or time, only by death or careful, gradual separation over many years. Marcus felt his heart sink. How many years? For a bond this strong? Formed in crisis and reinforced by deep psychic joining. Miralife shrugged elegantly. Perhaps a decade. Perhaps longer. 10 years. Marcus repeated numbly. At minimum, Miralife confirmed. And that assumes perfect cooperation from both parties, careful management by trained mind guides, and no external stresses that might strengthen the connection. The reality of his situation settled over Marcus like a weight. He wasn't just committed to a year of cultural exchange. He was bound to this child, this clan, this alien society for possibly decades. Running away wasn't an option, but staying meant accepting that he would never be safe, that threats would follow him wherever he went. However, Theron Vass said into the heavy silence, there may be another path. Marcus looked up hopefully. What kind of path? The trial of worthiness, the voice announced. An ancient tradition used when the clan faces questions about a member's true loyalty or capability. You would be tested in combat, in wisdom, in your understanding of our ways. Success would grant you full clan membership and the protection that comes with it. Failure means exile. Veldar finished with satisfaction. And the gradual severance of your bond under controlled conditions. Marcus felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. It was essentially a formal version of what he'd been facing since his arrival. Prove himself worthy or lose everything he'd tried to protect. But now it would be official with clear stakes and defined outcomes. What would the trials involve, he asked. 3 tests, Theron Vass explained. Combat prowess, to prove you can protect those under your care. Tactical wisdom, to show you understand the strategic thinking necessary for clan survival. And soul-deep commitment, to demonstrate that your loyalty extends beyond personal affection to true understanding of our ways. And if I succeed, then you become one of us in truth, Vexhara said, speaking for the first time since the formal presentations began. Full clan membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Your bond with Zara would be recognized as legitimate, and any who threatened you would face the wrath of the entire Starfire clan. Marcus thought about the alternative, years of gradual separation from Zara, watching their connection slowly weaken while he tried to rebuild a life that would always feel incomplete. The prospect of formal trials, even potentially deadly ones, seemed preferable to that slow torture. "I accept," he said. The council chamber erupted in discussion as clan members debated the wisdom of his decision, the specific nature of the tests he would face, and the timeline for their implementation. Through it all, Marcus sat quietly, wondering what he had just committed himself to. When the formal session ended and the clan leaders began to disperse, Vexhara approached him with an expression that mixed approval with concern. "You realize," she said quietly, "that some of those who designed these trials may hope you fail?" "I figured as much," Marcus replied. "But what choice do I have? I can't run away, and I can't spend the next decade watching Zara suffer because I'm not strong enough to be what she needs." Vexhara studied him with those shifting prismatic eyes. "The trials will be difficult, more difficult than anything you have faced before. Some candidates do not survive. Then, I'll have to make sure I'm not one of them." Her expression showed something that might have been pride. "Good, because your training begins now." The next 2 weeks were the most physically and mentally demanding of Marcus's life. Kale proved to be a relentless taskmaster, driving him through combat forms that stretched his human physiology to its limits. The young Etherian seemed determined to compress months of warrior training into days, pushing Marcus through exercises designed to build strength, speed, and the kind of tactical awareness that could keep him alive in combat. "Your species is surprisingly adaptable," Kale observed after a particularly grueling session with practice weapons. Marcus was sprawled on the training mat, his clothes soaked with sweat, and his muscles screaming in protest. "Your reflexes are improving faster than I expected." "Gee, thanks," Marcus gasped. "I feel so much better about being terrible at everything." "You are not terrible," Kale corrected seriously. "You are untrained. There's a difference. Terrible implies lack of ability or potential. You have both. You simply lack experience." Marcus levered himself into a sitting position, wincing as overtaxed muscles protested the movement. "Will it be enough for the trials?" Kale's bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors that Marcus was learning to interpret as cautious optimism. "Perhaps. Your bond with Zara gives you advantages that normal candidates lack. You can sense danger before it materializes, coordinate with others through psychic connection, and draw upon reserves of strength that surprise even you." That last part was true. During their most recent sparring sessions, Marcus had found himself moving in ways that should have been impossible for someone with his limited training. It was as if the psychic bond with Zara allowed him to access abilities that went beyond his normal human limitations. "The Mind Guide wants to see you," Kale continued. "Silas 10 believes your psychic development is proceeding faster than normal. She wishes to evaluate your progress before the trials begin." Marcus groaned, but climbed to his feet. Silas 10 was the clan's senior mind guide, a specialist in psychic abilities who had been monitoring his developing connection with Zara. Her evaluations were always intense, involving deep meditation and mental exercises that left him feeling emotionally drained. He found Silas 10 in her private chambers, a space filled with crystalline formations that resonated with psychic energy. The elderly Etherian was deep in meditation when he arrived, her bioluminescent patterns cycling slowly through colors that indicated profound concentration. "Sit," she said without opening her eyes. "Center yourself. Let the bond flow freely between you and the child." Marcus settled into the meditation posture she had taught him, allowing his consciousness to expand until he could sense Zara's presence somewhere in the clan settlement. The child was in her lessons with the other young nobles, learning the history and customs that would shape her adult life. Through their connection, he felt her concentration, her occasional frustration with difficult concepts, and, underlying it all, her constant awareness of his presence. Deeper, Silas 10 instructed. Do not simply sense her emotions. Touch her thoughts. Marcus hesitated. The level of connection she was describing felt invasive, like reading someone's private diary. But, under the mind guide's steady instruction, he gradually allowed the bond to strengthen until he could perceive not just Zara's emotions, but fragments of her actual thoughts. The experience was overwhelming. Zara's mind was bright and quick, but also utterly alien in its development. Her thoughts moved in patterns that reflected her species' psychic evolution, touching on concepts and connections that human consciousness wasn't designed to process. Excellent, Silas 10 murmured. Now withdraw slowly. Maintain awareness, but restore your individual boundaries. Marcus followed her instructions, gradually pulling his consciousness back until the connection with Zara returned to its normal, manageable level. When he opened his eyes, he found Silas 10 studying him with an expression of amazement. Remarkable, she said. In 2 weeks, you have achieved a level of psychic integration that typically takes our own people months to develop. The bond between you and the child is unprecedented. Is that good or bad? Marcus asked. Both, Silas 10 replied honestly. Such rapid development indicates exceptional compatibility and potential. But it also suggests that the connection may become stronger than either of you can safely control. You must learn to manage it carefully, or it could overwhelm your individual identities. The warning sent a chill through Marcus. What do you mean? Psychic bonding carries risks, the mind guide explained. If the connection becomes too strong, the two consciousnesses can begin to merge permanently. The child might lose her individual personality, becoming an extension of your thoughts and desires. Or you might find yourself subsumed into her developing psyche, your adult awareness dissolved in her growing mind. Marcus felt his stomach clench with fear. How do I prevent that? Training, discipline, and acceptance that the bond must be carefully managed for the rest of your lives. Silas 10's expression was grave. This is why the trials are so important. If you cannot master your own abilities, if you cannot prove that you understand the responsibilities that come with such power, then the bond must be severed for both your sakes. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters overlooking the clan settlement, watching the bioluminescent patterns of the city pulse in rhythm with the planet's magnetic field. Zara was asleep in her chambers nearby, and through their connection, he could sense her peaceful dreams filled with images of flying among the crystal formations that surrounded their home. A soft chime announced a visitor, and Marcus turned to find Vexhara standing in his doorway. The warrior queen looked tired, her usually perfect composure showing signs of strain. "May I enter?" she asked formally. "Of course." Marcus gestured to the room's simple furnishings. "Though I have to warn you, human hospitality is pretty basic compared to Etherian standards." Vexhara settled gracefully into one of the organic chairs, her movements still carrying the fluid precision of a trained fighter, even in relaxation. "I wanted to speak with you before the trials begin tomorrow." Tomorrow? Marcus felt his heart skip. "I thought I had more time to prepare." The clan council moved up the timeline, Vexhara explained. Intelligence reports indicate that Corvani forces are massing in nearby systems. If the trials are to proceed, they must happen quickly. Marcus processed this information with growing alarm. "Are we under threat of attack?" "Possibly, which makes your situation more urgent." Vexhara fixed him with her prismatic gaze. "I need to know that if the trials succeed, if you become a full member of this clan, you will be ready to fulfill all the obligations that come with that status." "What kind of obligations?" "Kumba, leadership, the responsibility to protect not just Zara, but our entire community." Vexhara's voice carried the weight of someone who had made such choices many times before. "Clan membership is not honorary. If war comes to Lysara, you will be expected to fight alongside us. You will be expected to kill, if necessary, to defend our people. Marcus thought about his life as a xenobiologist, the peaceful years spent cataloging alien flora and studying ancient artifacts. The idea of taking a life in combat seemed impossible, alien to everything he thought he knew about himself. But as he reached out through his bond with Zara, sensing her sleeping presence and the absolute trust she placed in his protection, Marcus realized that his old life was already gone. The moment he had stepped between her and the Corvani soldiers, he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "Understand," he said quietly. Vexhara nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Do you?" "Because there are those among the clan who believe that humans lack the will to do what is necessary. They think your species is too soft, too concerned with individual morality to make the hard choices that survival sometimes requires." "And what do you think?" Vexhara was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to read something written there in a language she didn't quite understand. When she spoke, her voice carried a note of uncertainty that he had never heard from her before. "I think," she said slowly, "that any species capable of producing individuals who will sacrifice themselves for alien children they have never met might be stronger than we realize. But thinking and knowing are different things." She stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. "The first trial begins at dawn. Combat prowess. You will face 3 opponents in armed combat, using whatever weapons and tactics you choose. Defeat them all, or prove that you would die, try to protect those under your care." After she left, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, watching the alien constellations wheel overhead through his window. In less than 12 hours, he would face the first formal test of his worthiness to remain on Lysura, to maintain his bond with Zara, to become part of a warrior culture that might soon be fighting for its survival. He thought about calling up his training programs, reviewing combat techniques or meditation exercises that might give him an edge in the coming trials. Instead, he found himself reaching out through the psychic bond, touching Zara's sleeping mind with the gentlest possible contact. Through the connection, he felt her dreams shift slightly, incorporating his presence into whatever adventures her subconscious was creating. Her sleeping thoughts radiated contentment and security, the absolute faith of a child who knew that someone loved her enough to face any danger on her behalf. That faith, Marcus realized, was both his greatest strength and his most terrifying responsibility. Tomorrow, he would find out if it was enough to make him worthy of the trust she had placed in him. The trial arena was older than human civilization. Carved from living rock in the early days of Etherian society, the circular combat space had been shaped by generations of psychic energy until it hummed with the accumulated memory of countless trials and challenges. The walls rose in terraced rings, providing seating for clan members who had gathered to witness Marcus's first test, and the floor was covered with a substance that looked like sand but felt warm and responsive to psychic pressure. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, wearing the adaptive armor that Kael'da had provided and carrying weapons that still felt foreign in his hands. The energy sword hummed with contained power, its blade extending from a hilt that had been designed to respond to psychic commands. The shield generator on his left arm would provide protection, but only as long as his concentration held. Across the arena, his 3 opponents waited. The first was Veldar, the weapons master who had opposed Marcus's inclusion in the clan from the beginning. His scarred features showed grim satisfaction as he hefted a massive energy mace that could crush armor with a single blow. Everything about his stance and expression suggested that he intended this trial to end Marcus's aspirations permanently. The second opponent was Kaeflon, a younger warrior whose specialty was range combat. Her bio-rifle was already primed with energy that would stun rather than kill, but Marcus had learned enough about Etherian weapons to know that stun could still mean permanent injury if the settings were high enough. The third fighter surprised him. Kael'da, his mentor and guide, armed with twin energy blades and wearing an expression of apologetic determination. "The trial is not personal," Theron Vass announced from his position of honor in the upper tiers. Each combatant has been instructed to fight at full capacity, using all available skills and techniques. The candidate may use any tactics necessary to achieve victory. Marcus felt Zara's presence in the stands, her emotions a mixture of excitement and worry that threatened to distract him from the coming battle. Through their bond, he tried to project confidence and reassurance, though he wasn't sure how much of it was genuine. "Begin," Theron Vass commanded. Veldar charged immediately, his massive frame covering the distance between them with surprising speed. The energy mace swung in an arc designed to crush Marcus's ribs, but the psychic bond with Zara suddenly flared to life, giving him awareness of the attack before it fully developed. Marcus rolled to the side, feeling the displaced air from the mace's passage. His counterstrike with the energy sword caught Veldar in the shoulder, but the weapon's master's armor absorbed most of the impact. The older warrior spun with fluid grace, bringing his weapon around in a backhanded blow that would have taken Marcus's head off if he hadn't ducked at the last possible second. An energy bolt from Cathlon's rifle forced Marcus to dodge again, and he realized that his opponents were working in coordination. While Veldar kept him busy with close combat, the sniper would look for opportunities to disable him from range. And Kael'thas was circling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike with his twin blades. It was a textbook tactical assault, the kind of coordinated attack that Marcus's human training had never prepared him for. Against opponents with superior experience, better equipment, and perfect teamwork, his chances of victory were essentially zero. Unless he stopped fighting like a human and started fighting like an Etherian. Marcus reached out through his bond with Zara, not to draw strength from her, but to expand his awareness through her psychic abilities. Suddenly, he could sense his opponent's intentions before they acted on them, feel the flow of energy through their weapons, perceive the subtle shifts in their positioning that telegraph their next moves. Veldar's second charge came at him with the same overwhelming force as the first, but this time Marcus was ready. He stepped into the attack rather than away from it, using the weapon's master's momentum against him. The energy sword traced a precise arc that found the gap between helmet and breastplate, delivering a shock that sent Veldar sprawling. Cathlon's rifle swung toward him, but Marcus was already moving, his enhanced awareness allowing him to predict her targeting pattern. He threw himself into a roll that brought him closer to her position while avoiding the energy bolt that seared through the air where he had been standing. Kael'thas chose that moment to strike, his twin blades weaving a pattern of light that should have trapped Marcus in an inescapable attack web. But the psychic connection with Zara was flowing at full strength now, and through her enhanced perception, Marcus could see the spaces between the attacks, the tiny gaps that would allow him to survive. He flowed through Kael'thas' assault like water, his sword work becoming an extension of the psychic harmony that bound him to Zara. Each strike was perfectly timed, each defensive move precisely calculated. For a brief, shining moment, Marcus understood what it meant to fight like a true Etherian warrior, not just with weapons and tactics, but with the full integration of psychic ability and physical prowess. The moment ended when Cathlon's second shot caught him in the side, the energy bolt punching through his armor's weakest point and sending him stumbling to the arena floor. Pain flared through his nervous system, and the psychic connection with Zara flickered as his concentration wavered. His three opponents closed in for the finishing strikes. That was when Zara screamed, not with her voice, but with her mind, a psychic cry of terror and fury that exploded through the arena like a shockwave. Every Etherian in the stands felt it, but for Marcus, bonded to her consciousness, it hit with the force of a physical blow. Power flowed through the connection between them, raw and untrained, but absolutely genuine. Zara was trying to protect him the only way she knew how, by sharing her own developing psychic abilities through their bond. It was dangerous, possibly damaging to both of them, but it gave Marcus strength he didn't know he possessed. He rose from the arena floor with inhuman grace, his energy sword blazing with power that came from something deeper than its mechanical systems. Veldar's attack, delivered with the full force of his considerable skill, was blocked with almost contemptuous ease. Marcus's counterstrike sent the weapon's master flying across the arena to land in an unconscious heap against the far wall. Cathlon managed to fire one more shot before Marcus reached her position, but he deflected the energy bolt with a shield and then touched her gently on the forehead. The psychic discharge that flowed through their contact wasn't enough to cause serious harm, but it overloaded her nervous system and dropped her into peaceful unconsciousness. That left Kale, his mentor and friend, standing alone in the center of the arena. The young Etherian had dropped his twin blades and was staring at Marcus with an expression of wonder and fear. Around them, the arena had gone completely silent except for the humming of crystal formations that were resonating with the psychic energy Marcus and Zara were generating between them. "I yield," Kale said quietly. Marcus felt the power flowing through him begin to ebb as Zara's psychic cry faded to exhaustion. The energy sword in his hand dimmed to normal levels, and suddenly he was just a tired human standing in an alien arena, surrounded by the unconscious forms of opponents he had somehow managed to defeat. In the stands, the clan members were on their feet, their bioluminescent patterns shifting through colors that spoke of amazement, approval, and more than a little fear. What they had witnessed was beyond anything they had expected from a human candidate. Theron Vass stood slowly, his ancient features showing a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "The first trial is complete," he announced. "The candidate has demonstrated combat prowess sufficient to protect those under his care." Marcus looked up at Zara, who was slumped in her seat with exhaustion, her small face pale from the effort of sharing her psychic abilities with him. Through their bond, he felt her pride in his victory, but also her confusion about what had happened between them. As medical personnel moved to tend to his defeated opponents, and clan members began to disperse, Marcus realized that he had passed his first test, but created an entirely new problem. The level of psychic integration he and Zara had achieved during the battle was beyond anything the clan had seen before, powerful enough to be genuinely useful, but also dangerous enough to be genuinely frightening. Tomorrow would bring the second trial, a test of tactical wisdom that would determine whether he understood the strategic thinking necessary for clan survival. But tonight, he would have to deal with the realization that his bond with Zara was growing stronger and more complex with each passing day. Whether that strength would be his salvation or his destruction remained to be seen. The Corvani fleet arrived 3 hours before Marcus's final trial. He was in the clan's war chamber with the senior leadership, preparing for the test of soul-deep commitment that would determine his final acceptance, when the alarm crystals began their warning song. The harmonious tones that normally provided peaceful background music throughout the settlement shifted to urgent, discordant notes that made every Etherian in the room stiffen with alarm. "Fleet emergence detected," announced the chamber's living monitoring system, its voice carrying the stress patterns of genuine fear. 47 vessels, Corvani configuration, entering the outer system at maximum acceleration. Theron Vass rose from his position at the council table, his ancient features showing grim determination. "Battle stations. Signal the fleet command that we are under direct assault." The chamber erupted into controlled chaos as clan leaders rushed to their emergency positions. Marcus found himself standing alone in the center of the room, unsure what his role should be in a genuine military crisis. "Your trial will have to wait," Vexhara said as she strapped on her combat armor with practiced efficiency. "The clan is under threat, and every warrior is needed." "What can I do?" Marcus asked. Vexhara paused in her preparations, studying him with those shifting prismatic eyes. "You could take Zara to the deep shelters with the other children and non-combatants. Keep her safe while we deal with the hegemony." The suggestion felt like a slap in the face. After everything he'd been through, all the training and trials, his role in a genuine crisis was to hide in a bunker while others fought to defend their home. "There has to be something else," Marcus said. "Some way I can help with the defense. You are not a trained warrior, Veldar interjected, his scarred features showing the kind of practical assessment that came from decades of combat experience. Your place is with the children, where you can do no harm through inexperience. The words stung, partly because they were true. Despite his recent training and the dramatic victory in his combat trial, Marcus knew he was still a novice when it came to real warfare. But the thought of hiding while Zara's people fought for their survival was unacceptable. Actually, Silas 10 said quietly, there may be another option. The mind guide had been silent through most of the crisis preparations, but now she stepped forward with an expression of reluctant calculation. The psychic bond between Marcus and Zara has reached unprecedented levels of integration. In theory, they could serve as a battlefield coordination nexus. Explain, Theron Vass commanded. Etherian battle tactics rely heavily on psychic coordination between multiple units, Silas 10 continued. Warriors share thoughts and perceptions through trained mind guides who serve as communication hubs. But the connection between Marcus and Zara is stronger than anything our guides can achieve, strong enough, perhaps, to coordinate our entire defense. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You want to use Zara as a weapon? Not a weapon, Silas 10 corrected. A communication system. Her natural psychic abilities, amplified through your bond, could allow our forces to operate with perfect coordination. Every ship captain, every ground commander, every individual warrior could share real-time tactical awareness. She's 5 years old, Marcus protested. She's also one of the most powerful natural psychics we've ever encountered, Vexhara said grimly. And, right now, she may be our only chance of victory against a force that outnumbers us 3-1. Marcus looked around the war chamber at the faces of the clan leadership. These were experienced warriors, tactical geniuses who had defended Etherian space for decades. If they thought the situation was desperate enough to risk a child in combat operations, then the threat they faced was beyond anything he had imagined. What would it involve? He asked reluctantly. You and Zara would be placed in the command center, Silas 10 explained. Your psychic bond would be amplified through the clan's psionic enhancement systems, allowing you to maintain mental contact with multiple defense units simultaneously. You would serve as a living communications network, providing instantaneous coordination across the entire battle space. And the risks? Silas 10's expression was grave. Psychic overload, permanent mental damage, death if the strain proves too great for either of you to handle. Marcus closed his eyes, reaching out through his bond to sense Zara's presence elsewhere in the settlement. She was in her chambers, being prepared for evacuation to the deep shelters by her caretakers, but through their connection, he could feel her awareness of the approaching danger. She was afraid, but not for herself. She was terrified that something might happen to him, to her mother, to all the people she loved. Through the bond, he also sensed something else. Her willingness to help, her instinctive understanding that her abilities could make a difference in the coming battle. Despite her young age, Zara possessed the deep-seated courage that marked all members of the Starfire clan. I'll do it, Marcus said quietly. But only if Zara agrees. I won't force her into this. Vexhara nodded, her expression showing both relief and admiration. Then, let's find out what my daughter chooses. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the clan's primary command center, surrounded by technology that was part machinery and part living organism. Crystalline displays showed the approaching Corvani fleet in tactical detail, while bioluminescent control surfaces responded to the thoughts and emotions of the operators who touched them. Zara sat beside him on a platform designed to amplify psychic abilities, her small form nearly lost in the elaborate harness that would monitor and protect her during the coming ordeal. She had listened to the explanation with the serious attention of a child who understood that adults were asking her to do something important and dangerous. Are you scared? Marcus asked her quietly. Zara considered the question with the careful thought she brought to all serious matters. A little, she admitted. But Mama says being scared is okay as long as you don't let it stop you from doing what's right. Marcus felt a surge of pride and protectiveness that had nothing to do with their psychic bond. This little girl, barely old enough to tie her shoes, was displaying the kind of courage that seasoned warriors would admire. "We'll be together," he promised her. "Whatever happens, I'll be right here with you." Zara smiled and took his hand, and immediately the command center filled with the warm glow of their activated bond. Displays throughout the room began showing enhanced readings as their combined psychic abilities interfaced with the clan's technology. "Fleet contact in 30 minutes, announced the tactical coordinator. "All units report ready for combat operations." Through the external sensors, Marcus could see the Corvani ships decelerating from hyperspace, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to break planetary defenses. They moved with the coordinated precision of a force that had conquered dozens of worlds, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. "Initiate psychic coordination," Vexhara commanded from her position at the tactical display. "All units, prepare to receive command guidance through the Nexus." Marcus felt the enhancement systems activate around him, powerful crystals that amplified his and Zara's natural abilities until their consciousness could reach across space to touch the minds of distant warriors. One by one, he made contact with the commanders of the Etherian Defense Force, ship captains in orbit around Lasura, ground-based weapons operators, and fighter pilots preparing to launch from hidden bases throughout the system. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Through Zara's abilities, amplified by the clan's technology, Marcus found himself simultaneously aware of dozens of different perspectives. He could see through the eyes of a fighter pilot as she checked her weapons systems, feel the tactical calculations running through a ship captain's mind as he positioned his vessel for optimal firing angles, sense the controlled tension of ground crews preparing their defensive positions. "Contact," someone shouted, though Marcus wasn't sure if the voice came from the command center or from one of the distant warriors connected through the psychic network. The first Corvani ships had entered weapons range, their heavy cannons beginning the bombardment that would clear the way for ground assault. Energy beams lanced through space toward the Etherian defensive positions, but the response was unlike anything the hegemony had encountered before. Every Etherian unit moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind that could see the entire battle space simultaneously. Ships dodged incoming fire with impossible precision while returning shots that found their targets with devastating accuracy. Fighter squadrons executed complex maneuvers that should have required extensive planning and communication, but which flowed as naturally as a single organism extending its limbs. Marcus felt himself at the center of it all. His consciousness expanded through Zara's psychic abilities to encompass the thoughts and perceptions of hundreds of warriors. He could see the tactical situation from every angle simultaneously, anticipate Corvani movements before they were fully formed, and coordinate responses that turned the enemy's numerical advantage into a liability. The Corvani commander, Admiral Thaknor, had expected to face typical Etherian tactics, graceful but independent units that could be overwhelmed through superior firepower and coordination. Instead, he found himself fighting an opponent that seemed to read his thoughts, that anticipated his every move, and responded with perfect countertactics. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical staff as another wave of attack ships was destroyed by Etherian forces that shouldn't have been able to coordinate so effectively. "Unknown, Admiral," his sensor operator replied. "But their coordination is unlike anything in our tactical databases. They're operating as if they share a single command consciousness." Through the psychic network, Marcus felt the Corvani confusion and growing alarm. Their advantage in numbers was being neutralized by coordination they couldn't understand or counter. But he also sensed the strain that maintaining the network was placing on him and Zara. The little girl was pushing her psychic abilities beyond anything she had ever attempted before, her young mind struggling to process the complex tactical information flowing through their bond. Marcus could feel her exhaustion growing, but also her determination to keep helping no matter what it cost her. Fleet movement, called the tactical coordinator. Corvani forces are regrouping for a concentrated assault on the primary orbital platforms. Through the network, Marcus saw the enemy strategy developing. Admiral Thaknor had realized that he couldn't win a conventional engagement against the perfectly coordinated Etherian defense. Instead, he was gambling everything on a massive assault that would overwhelm the defenders through sheer concentrated firepower, regardless of the cost to his own forces. It was a tactic that might work if the Etherian coordination could be disrupted at the critical moment. "They're targeting the command center," Vexhara announced grimly. Long-range sensors show Corvani stealth ships moving to attack this facility directly. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The enemy had realized that the unusual coordination of the Etherian forces had to be coming from a central source. If they could destroy or disrupt the command center, they could break the psychic network and return the battle to the kind of slugging match that their numerical superiority would guarantee them to win. "Evacuation protocols," Theron Vass ordered. "Move the Nexus to the backup facility." No time, Silas 10 reported from her monitoring station. "The psychic network is at a critical integration point. Attempting to move or disconnect now could cause permanent damage to both participants." Marcus looked at Zara, who was pale with exhaustion but still maintaining her grip on his hand with stubborn determination. Through their bond, he could feel her awareness of the approaching danger, but also her absolute refusal to abandon the warriors who were depending on their coordination. "We stay," he said quietly. Vexhara's expression showed anguish. "Marcus, if the command center is destroyed, then we die protecting our people," he replied, echoing words she had said to him during their first conversation about Etherian culture. "Isn't that what clan membership means?" For a moment, Vexhara looked at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Then, she nodded slowly, her expression showing pride mixed with grief. "Yes, that is exactly what it means." The first Corvani stealth ship attacked the command center with precise, devastating fire that collapsed the outer defenses in seconds. Emergency barriers slammed into place around the psychic enhancement platform, but Marcus could feel the facility's living systems crying out in pain as they absorbed damage that would have killed any purely mechanical installation. Through the network, he maintained contact with the defense forces while explosions shook the command center around them. Etherian ships continued to move in perfect coordination, but he could sense the strain beginning to affect their performance as the psychic network was disrupted by the ongoing attack. "Second wave incoming," someone shouted over the noise of collapsing support structures. Marcus closed his eyes and reached deeper into his bond with Zara, drawing on reserves of strength he hadn't known he possessed. The little girl responded immediately, her psychic abilities flaring to new levels of intensity as she instinctively matched his determination. Together, they held the network steady even as the command center shook apart around them. Through their combined consciousness, hundreds of Etherian warriors continued to fight as a single coordinated force, turning the Corvani assault into a grinding nightmare of perfect defensive responses. But Marcus could feel both of them approaching their limits. Zara's young mind was being pushed beyond its capacity, and his own consciousness was beginning to fray under the strain of maintaining contact with so many different perspectives simultaneously. They could hold the network together for minutes longer, perhaps an hour if they were lucky, but eventually the effort would kill them both. That was when the Terran Federation fleet arrived. The hyperspace emergence signatures appeared without warning on the edge of the system. Dozens of human warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel with the precision that marked a well-planned military operation. Their hull markings identified them as Federation Navy vessels, but their presence here now was completely unexpected. "This is Admiral Sarachan of the Terran Federation Navy," came a transmission that reached every ship in the system simultaneously. "The Federation has received reports of unprovoked Corvani aggression against our allies. All hegemony forces will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Marcus felt his heart skip as he heard the name. Admiral Chun was his aunt, the sister of his father who had risen through the ranks to become one of the Federation's most respected naval commanders. Her presence here couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had called for help, and she had responded with the full force of humanity's military might. The Corvani fleet found itself caught between the coordinated Etherian defense and a Federation force that outnumbered and outgunned them significantly. Admiral Thaknor's confident assault had become a desperate fighting retreat, with his forces trapped in a tactical situation that offered no possibility of victory. Hegemony Fleet is requesting terms for withdrawal, came the report from the communication station. Denied, Vexhara replied coldly. They attacked our civilians, threatened our children. They will surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. The battle that followed was brief and decisive. Caught between two forces and deprived of their numerical advantage, the Corvani ships were systematically disabled or destroyed. Admiral Thaknor's flagship was captured intact, along with its commander and senior staff who would face trial for their unprovoked assault on neutral territory. As the immediate threat ended, Marcus felt the psychic network begin to dissolve as exhausted warriors throughout the system relaxed their mental defenses. He and Zara maintained their connection for a few minutes longer, ensuring that all friendly forces were accounted for and that no additional threats were detected in the system. When they finally allowed the bond to return to its normal levels, both of them collapsed from exhaustion. Marcus felt as if his consciousness had been stretched thin and then snapped back like a rubber band, while Zara fell into a deep sleep that would probably last for hours. Silas Tan was at their side immediately, her scanning devices confirming that both had survived the ordeal without permanent damage. "Remarkable," she murmured. "The level of psychic integration you achieved. I've never seen anything like it. Is she okay?" Marcus asked weakly, looking at Zara's sleeping form. Exhausted but unharmed, the mind guide assured him. Her abilities have actually grown stronger through the experience. When she wakes, she will be more powerful than any Etherian psychic of her age in our recorded history. Marcus felt relieved and terrified in equal measure. The bond between him and Zara had been tested under the most extreme circumstances possible, and not only had it held, it had become something unprecedented in Etherian experience. "The final trial," he said suddenly, remembering what had been interrupted by the Corvani attack. Theron Vass approached their platform, his ancient features showing exhaustion, but also profound satisfaction. "I believe," he said formally, "that the test of soul-deep commitment has already been completed. When faced with mortal danger, when given the opportunity to seek safety for yourself and the child under your protection, you chose instead to risk both your lives for the good of the clan." The voice gestured toward the displays showing the aftermath of the battle, Corvani ships being escorted toward detention facilities while Federation and Etherian forces coordinated rescue operations. No greater proof of loyalty could be asked for. No demonstration of commitment could be more complete. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Does this mean?" "It means," Theron Vass announced with formal ceremony, "that you are hereby accepted as a full member of the Starfire clan, with all rights and responsibilities thereunto belonging. Your bond with Zara is recognized as legitimate and binding, and any who threaten you or those under your protection will face the wrath of our entire people." Around the damaged command center, the surviving clan leaders raised their voices in a harmony that seemed to resonate with the very stones of Lasara. It was a victory song, Marcus realized, but also a welcome song, a formal recognition that he was no longer a stranger or guest, but truly one of their own. Later, as the immediate crisis passed and repairs began throughout the settlement, Marcus found himself on the observation deck of the clan's main spire. Zara was awake now, though still recovering from their shared ordeal, and she had insisted on joining him to watch the Federation fleet take up defensive positions around Lasara. "Your aunt is very impressive," Vexhara said as she joined them. "Her tactical coordination with our forces was flawless." Marcus nodded, still processing the fact that family connections had played a role in their salvation. I'll have to thank her properly when things calm down. She has requested a meeting, Vexhara continued. There are apparently political implications to the Federation's intervention that need to be discussed. Marcus suspected that was an understatement. The alliance between humanity and the Etherian collective that had been forged in battle today would reshape the balance of power in this region of the galaxy. The Corvani hegemony's expansion had been checked, at least temporarily, and new possibilities for cooperation between species have been opened. But at the moment, those larger implications seemed less important than the small hand that slipped into his as Zara moved to stand beside him. Guardian Marcus, she said in careful standard, using the formal title that marked his new status within the clan. Are you going to stay with us always now? Marcus looked down at her upturned face, seeing in her prismatic eyes the absolute trust and love that had brought him to this point. Through their bond, he could feel her contentment, her joy at having him officially recognized as part of her family, and, underneath it all, the growing strength of psychic abilities that would shape her into something remarkable. Yes, he said simply. Always. The word felt right in a way that surprised him. His old life as a solitary researcher seemed like something that had happened to a different person in a different universe. This was who he was now, guardian, protector, and member of a warrior clan that had become his true family. Vexhara moved to stand on Zara's other side, creating a small family group on the observation deck. The bond between you is stronger now than ever before, she observed. The trial by fire has proven that it can withstand any test. Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of her words through the psychic connection that linked him to Zara. What had begun as an emergency response to protect a frightened child had become something deeper and more complex than he could have imagined. They were bonded now not just by circumstance, but by choice, by shared trials, and mutual sacrifice. What happens next? He asked. Now, Vexhara said with a smile that transformed her warrior's features into something warm and maternal. You learn to be a father. The concept still felt overwhelming, but as Marcus watched the alien constellations emerge in Lysara's darkening sky, he realized that he was looking forward to the challenge. He had found his place in the universe, not through careful planning or rational decision-making, but through a simple act of protecting someone who needed help. In the end, that was what being human really meant, the stubborn refusal to let innocence suffer, no matter what the cost. And if that quality could find a place in an alien warrior culture, if it could forge bonds strong enough to withstand any trial, then perhaps humanity had more to offer the galaxy than anyone had realized. As Zara leaned against his side, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through the peaceful colors that indicated complete contentment, Marcus Chun understood that his real life was just beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever trials the future might bring, he would face them as part of a family that had chosen him as completely as he had chosen them. The bond between them would grow stronger with time, deeper with shared experience, until it became something that could withstand any test the universe might devise. And at its heart would always be the simple truth that had started everything. Sometimes the greatest act of heroism is simply refusing to walk away when someone needs help. From that truth, worlds could be changed and alliances forged. From that foundation, a new future could be built for all the species brave enough to reach across the void and trust in each other's fundamental decency. As the stars emerged in the alien sky above them, Marcus felt that future beginning to take shape, bright with promise and infinite possibility.